Christopher, you take the ball. People are sick of hearing me talk about it. What are you hearing on the injury front?
Will Campbell's going to be back before the end of the year. And I think that's as good a place to start as any, given how bad the injury looked on Sunday. There were initial thoughts that he was going to be gone for the season. They were going to have to figure things out at left tackle long term. And when I say long term, I mean the rest of the year, obviously. But if you're able to get him back before the start of the postseason, then you're going to be in good shape. Apparently, the same is true with Jared Wilson. Really, I think the most important thing for this team right now is to figure out a way to get that number one seed. And I think if you go 4-1 the rest of the way, if you can figure out a way to go 4-1 the rest of the way, that should be enough to lock down the number one seed. The team that I think that you're probably right now at least a little bit worried about, not worried about, but you're most concerned about is probably Denver. So I basically, though, to answer your question, he's going to be back between now and in the start of January. It's just a matter of when.
Okay, when will you know kind of or ever what happened with Campbell in terms of will they ever get into like what was he was told on the sideline? Reese was on yesterday. He said that he was still on a cart, well after he had been taken off the field. He obviously was very upset when he found out what happened, and they can do stuff on the sideline. They obviously thought it was bad. Vrabel thought it was bad. It seemed after the game. Mm-hmm. Will you ever really get a definitive idea of what they had to do? I'd imagine they had to scope it and stuff. I don't imagine they just went with an MRI, but maybe they did.
I will say this, though, Fred, that he was good enough to fly home with the team. Okay. And that's, admittedly a low bar. But I think that's again as good a place to start as any. If he had to stay in Cincinnati overnight for observation or whatever the case may be, then I think that you're talking about a more serious, a more long-term thing. But right now, as it exists, I think there was real concern in the moment that it was more severe than ultimately it turned out to be. Because again, like you said, look, Vrabel was not happy about it after the game. Vrabel was clearly, a little bit upset. Some of the rest of the offensive linemen really didn't want to talk about it as well. So, you understand that and, you kind of move on from there. But again, I think that the big thing is he's back with the team. He's in New England. He was okay to travel. And so all signs, again, point to the fact he's going to be back before the end of the regular season.
And that's good news. And just one final word on that is when will we know if they put him on IR?
They will probably make a move here within the next couple of days if they are going to put him on IR, because they have to start, obviously game planning and thinking about, the best possible 53 or 48 or whatever it is that they put out there for the Monday night game against the Giants. So they're going to do it. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it sooner rather than later.
How do you explain the reaction, Chris? We'll get to Wilson in a second, but how do you explain Campbell's reaction and the reaction to those around him and kind of juxtapose that with the ultimate diagnosis? I mean, you see a towel over his head. He's openly weeping. He gets carted off. The lineman didn't want to talk about it afterwards. And then it comes back that we may see him in a month. And, Jared Wilson leaves, and you see Morgan Moses go over and put his hand on his shoulder as if a veteran saying, don't worry, you'll be back. Maybe this season is out. It just both looked a lot more serious after emerging from the blue tent than it ultimately turned out to be. How do you figure that?
In those moments, they're very emotional moments, and there's a lot of adrenaline going, and it's in the first kind of blush of what happened. And so I can completely understand there is a level of not excitement, but a level of, like I said, the adrenaline is rushing. The adrenaline in that moment is maybe causes you to think, oh no, this is a long-term thing. This is a more serious thing than it turned out to be. But it turns out that, hey, everything was okay, or not okay, but again, it wasn't as bad as they thought it would, was ultimately going to be.
Okay, so the offensive line have been playing, I think, better than a lot of people's expectations. And maybe we saw some of these things start to manifest in the game. Vrabel said yesterday that, their inability to punch it in when they were down on the 1 yard line, they wanted to run some big personnel packages that they couldn't. And that's, that impeded how they wanted to run things. How is it going to affect them starting as early as this Sunday with those two absences? What do you think they will do to kind of balance that?
Hardy, I think it wasn't just the struggles in the red zone where we saw, the fact that they were down a couple of offensive linemen. The fact that I don't think they took a lot of shots to Kayshon Boutte, and maybe part of that is just because he was, back after a couple days or a couple games on the shelf. I don't think that this is going to be an offense that's missing, a couple offensive linemen. I don't think this is going to be an offense that's going to take a lot of deep shots. I think we saw that on Sunday where, you leaned on Hunter Henry, who had a career day, 115 receiving yards. You're going to see more short stuff. You're going to see more underneath stuff, and you're going to rely on some of those pass catchers, the tight ends, the wide receivers, the running backs to put up yards after catch. I don't think we're going to see a lot of deep shots to guys like Boutte or Pop Douglas. You're going to have to kind of manufacture some yards in the passing game in some unique ways. So the other thing with the red zone stuff, man, I just you really miss a guy like James Devlin. And if you're going to run this offense and if you're going to continue to do that kind of stuff in the red zone, maybe you need a little bit of an upgraded fullback. So just a couple of different things, specifically as it relates to the offensive line. They need to figure out a way to kind of scheme things up so you're not, you're not looking downfield. You're not taking 7-step drops and looking downfield.
What's going on with the run defense outside of the absence of Milton Williams? It was so strong in the last few games. It's not looked as good.
Yeah, I think I heard you guys talking with Mike Reese about that yesterday, and I would echo what he said. Look, it's the end of a very long stretch, and they're coming off after the Jets game. They had the 3 games in 12 days. They did have that mini bye kind of built in there, leading into this one, and they're going to have a bye moving forward. But they played 12 games and they haven't had a break. And I think that they could use a little bit of a jolt here down the stretch. Obviously, like you said, it starts with Milton Williams. The fact that Tonga was not at 100% as the game went on. And when you run Corey Durden and Eric Gregory out there, it's not the same as running Milton Williams and Tonga and Barmore in that group. So you're going to see a bit of a step down with that personnel package. So there are multiple things there. But yeah, I think that we've just reached the point in the season where they're kind of ground down a little bit and they need a little bit of a break.
And you think the bye kind of rectifies some of that?
Yeah, some of it. I do think that they're going to have to figure some things out. And I do think they also honestly catch a break because they're not going to face Scatterboot this weekend.
I think they're going to have to.
Come on.
Yeah. They're going to have to
not
figure
lightning
over
there.
Oh, man. All right.
They ran the ball pretty well against the Lions, I think. But okay, without Scatterboot.
Yeah, but yeah, they're going to have to figure out a way to get back to where they were over the first month of the season because coming up, they have James Cook, they have Derrick Henry. They're going to be tested on the ground moving forward, and how they operate, what they do, is going to go a long way toward defining the rest of the season.
You know what's funny is unless the Baltimore gets healthier, I think the Patriots are a better team than Baltimore.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, Baltimore is not impressive.
Yeah, Lamar just came down with his 3rd injury in 3 weeks. It's a toe this time.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah,
he
and
looked bad on Sunday against a bad defense.
Yeah, I wonder if we've reached a point in the season with the Ravens where they're starting to think about 2026 and beyond. I would never accuse a Baltimore team of kind of packing it in and looking forward like that. But over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be interesting to see how the Ravens operate from a personnel perspective, because I can see getting to that game on the 21st and the Ravens, if they've lost a game or two between now and then, being a little bit of an easier mark going into that game on the 21st.
Yeah. So going 4-1 doesn't seem unrealistic at all.
No, it doesn't. I mean, if you can, there are things, there are problems, there are issues, like you talked about the run defense, the red zones, the lack of touchdowns in the red zone, the fact that they continue to give up opening points to opponents on their first drives. They're those types of things that need to be addressed between now and the start of the postseason. But those are manageable in the short term, especially if you get Milton Williams back, if you get Will Campbell, Jared Wilson. If those guys are back in your lineup, you can kind of scheme things up and figure out a way to go 4-1 between now and then. And again, kind of hold off the Broncos. I think you're going to be in good shape, because if you're home, you just get healthy anyway. The bye aside, you don't have to get on a plane. You don't lose the day. You can stay at home. And I think that sets you up much nicer than if you had the 2 or 3 seed.
Yeah, it should be interesting. 14-3. That's a pretty good record.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, especially, I mean, given what we were talking about last year, that 14 or 4-13, and we were writing draft stories and, before Thanksgiving. It's quite a turnaround for this franchise.
Yeah, and Denver's schedule is no joke. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. If certainly, I mean, they might even go 3-2 and they get the first seed. But it's very good. Christopher Price, always appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Enjoy the weekend, and we will talk to you very soon, hopefully.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.